From a very young age, I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. My mom was an educator, and I just fell in love with teaching. I'm the eldest of 5 children, and so I think teaching was kind of always part of who I was, and it has always been my dream to be a teacher. It never wavered. In high school, our family moved to France, and my father wanted us to learn French, so he moved the family to France, and I learned French. And so not only did I fall in love with education early on, but then I fell in love with French, and I started teaching French. So I've always loved learning. I love going to school. I think that's one of the best parts about being a teacher, is that you're always learning things for the classroom, outside the classroom, as part of a community of educators. And I did a master's in educational leadership and administration, and that kind of led me down the steps to becoming our assistant academic dean at the Madeira School, which led me to becoming the director of educational innovation at Madeira, and which has brought me to Oaknall, which is a wonderful, the most perfect next step for me, I think. As soon as I walked on Oaknall's campus, I was struck by the community. Everybody was welcoming. Everybody said hello, the students engaged in conversations, the types of questions that the girls asked at our lunch conversations, where they wanted to make a connection. You could feel it in all the conversations I was having. And that sense of community is what brought me here. And coupled with the values of Oaknall being wisdom, faith, and service, those struck me as a wonderful foundation for a school. If you're going to build a Catholic school on a foundation of faith, wisdom, and service, and then surround it with the type of community that Oaknall has, it has to be a special place. I think my goal is to learn. Right now, that's my most immediate goal, is to learn more about the community that I am joining, to be in classrooms, to learn more from the students and the faculty. And that's my most immediate goal. I think given the current world situation, there's a lot of goals about reopening school and what that looks like. So those are some of the more immediate goals for myself. I think long-term goals, that Oaknall is an amazing place to educate young women, and to be part of that and to help support that mission is my long-term goal, to bring that to life in every way I can. There's a lot of uncertainty right now, and I think being flexible is really key, and listening to concerns, listening to ideas. I think that's going to be key to a successful reopening. And those are things that we would be doing kind of regardless of the type of reopening we're at. I think those are very important things, to be listening and to be idea generating and to ask questions. I think they are more immediate in this summer than they would traditionally be. You know, those would be conversations you may be having in September, whereas now we are having them in July. And the goal is to be able to support everybody, and to be able to create that community. So whether it's online or in person, creating that sense of community for all of our new faculty, for our new students, for our returning students, for our returning faculty, I think is really important, because that's the glue, that's the fabric that holds schools together. I mean, that's what creates the vitality of schools. We're learning, our minds are growing, but that sense of community is really what also builds our spirit. And so being cognizant of both the academic piece and keeping our spirits growing as well, I think is important. And might looks different if you're virtual than in person. It's much more, it's easier to make a connection face-to-face in person, and harder to do online, but not impossible. It's just different types of activities or intentions, and being able to shift between the two. You know, we have phenomenal educators and amazing students who were able to pivot in the spring to doing distance learning in amazing ways. And they learn things about themselves and they learn things about each other that they would never have known otherwise. They discovered strengths in themselves that they didn't know existed. And I think that's a positive. You know, there are lots of challenges, so it's good to think about what did we gain? We gain new skills. And that's what learning and education is. So they may look different than our traditional skills we might have learned last spring, but they're no less valuable. So I am Canadian. So I've grown up kind of between Canada and the US my whole life, back and forth. So I started my undergraduate in Canada at Queen's University, and then from there went over to England and studied at Cambridge, and from there came back to the United States and started teaching. And after that, I went, as I mentioned, and did my a second master's in EDS in Educational Administration and Leadership. And I love learning. So whether it's been formal classes or informal, I think that's kind of always been part of my education, is doing those things. I think I've taught and lived in France, in Germany, in England, in the US, and Canada, and I think that's always been important to me, having lots of different perspectives, especially when you think about education and thinking about the different types of education systems. So that's always been a big part of my both learning and experience with education. Global education is essential. We live in an interconnected world, and seeing different viewpoints is very important. And I think global education is not only about traveling and experiencing other cultures firsthand, but it's also bringing that into the classroom and experiencing different viewpoints and perspectives. And that can be culturally, it can be along race lines, in any different way, that you can see different perspectives. And I think that's one of the key pieces of global education, is that idea of what lens, what viewpoint are we seeing something through, whether it's history, a current event, food, music, traditions, a holiday. It's all about what different viewpoints we're looking at something. I think that's what I love about global education. I love to travel, which probably doesn't come as any surprise, but I love to travel. I love to experience new cultures, try new things, put myself in a learning situation. I have a new puppy, so I have a West Highland Terrier, which many have met. Her name is Luna, and she's adorable, but she takes up most of my extra time in all good ways. She's an excellent alarm clock, and so yes, Luna takes up currently a lot of my free time, and then traveling and exploring new cultures and places. Those are some of the things I love to do. You may be surprised to know that I have an identical twin sister. So we are very identical. She is not local, but she will visit campus. You will also see my entire family on campus. We are a very close family, and they will visit quite frequently as soon as everything opens back up. So, but yes, I have an identical twin sister. So over the past 15 years, I've had the good fortune to work in all-girls education, and it is something that I wandered into. And once I found my home in all-girls education, I called it home. It was the place I wanted to learn and grow. And I think one of the things that draws me to all-girls education is that lifting and building of a girl's voice and helping them journey through their experience of discovering who they are, finding their voice. And it is something that I'm very passionate about.